reflected a total of 844 million shares traded in 8,922 transactions with a total value of approximately 9.4 billion naira. The overall market capitalization of the Nigerian Stock Exchange currently stands at around 35.8 trillion naira. During the trading session, a total of 115 different stocks were involved, out of which 38 stocks gained value, while 34 stocks experienced a decrease in value. Among the gainers, we have Transcorp Hotel. It showed the highest increase in share price, gaining 10% and closing at 39.5 naira per share. Telerams and Ometech Ventures witnessed a decrease in their share prices, all falling by 10% to 1.17 naira per share. Other stocks like Champion Breweries also had a decrease in their share prices with percentages of 9.89%, respectively 9.33% and 9.32%. The most actively traded stocks during the session were Charms with a trading volume of 91.7 million shares, followed by FCMB Group with 121 million shares, Universal Insurance Company with 75 million shares, and United Bank for Africa with 55.1 million shares. Now, at the conclusion of the trading session on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, KSE, the move to Kenya saw an all-share index of 113.83 shares with a trading volume of 8.4 million shares across 1,327 transactions. This resulted in a market value of 177 Kenyan shillings and a market capitalization of 1.78 trillion Kenyan shillings. Similarly, on the Botswana Stock Exchange, the BSE, the session ended with an all-share index of 8,072.91. The trading activity involved 72,388 shares, valued at 325,699.81. Botswana Pula marking a significant 156% increase in share trade volume. Now, the total capitalization, or the total market capitalization, stood at 393.6 billion Pula. Moving away from Africa, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, DJIA, is a collection of 30 large American companies. On July 11, 2023, it closed at a level of 34,166.39 points. It experienced a modest increase of 221.99 points, representing a 0.65% rise. This indicates a slight growth in the overall value of the Dow Jones. Now, let's discuss the Russell 2000 index, which comprises 2,000 smaller publicly traded companies in the United States. On July 11, 2023, the Russell 2000 index concluded at 1,918.10 points. It saw a boost of 8.50 points, corresponding to a 0.45% increase. This reveals a minor appreciation in the overall value of the Russell 2000 index. Now, let's talk about the FTSE 100 index, which represents the top 100 companies in Great Britain. At the end of the trading session, it closed at 7,286.04 points. It went up by 12.25 points, which is a small increase of 0.17%. This means that the FTSE 100 index overall value has slightly improved. Now, let's discuss the DAX index, which represents the top 30 companies in Germany. On July 11, 2023, the DAX closed at 15,805.35 points. It went down by 132.19 points, but that is an actual increase of 0.84% in the overall value of the DAX index. This indicates that the DAX index is showing positive growth. Shifting focus to the commodities market, currently the price of gold stands at $1,932.23 US per troy ounce. Similarly, the price of silver is at $23.10 US per troy ounce. And moving to the energy sector, Brent crude is being sold at $79.42 US per barrel. Shifting gears to agricultural commodities, cocoa is currently being traded at 2,777.00 British pounds per ton. Lastly, the price of wheat is at 252.06 US cents per ton. And away from that, we talk about currency. We move to Nigeria. the Nigerian naira has been displaying positive developments in the currency market. Currently, the naira has a value of 744.07 against the US dollars, and against the euro, 865.17, against the Swiss francs, 881.7, and against the British pound, 1,011.28. Against the Emirati dirham, 213.8, and against the Japanese yen, 5.57. And that's the market trend for now. It is very important that we make deep sense of these updates, and we will get to that in the next segment. Stay tuned to Business Insight. Guest has joined. There's someone else. Welcome back to Business Insight and Soup News. Once again, I am Olaoluwa Awe, but this is where we make sense of the news updates, the market trends that I read earlier on the program. And joining me to quickly analyze the market trends is an accountant and a stockbroker, Mr. Lateef Jimoh. Welcome to Business Insight once again. So what were the major, what's the major difference between what we had, in the trading session, across Nigeria and across the world, yesterday compared to the day before?
Well, if you look at the stock market, it's been trending high since the start of this week, and you can see that, the highest in about 18 years. Wow. The Austria index has been gaining, and this portends a positive trend in our market. Even yesterday, or except for the value stock that I bit low, we have industrial good getting high, like Dangote Cement plus 10%, Boa Cement, and Dangote Sugar, I guess. So this have been trend, and the market makers, I know you cannot leave out the positive sentiment of the market in this thing. So you can look at the effect of the policy formulation of the market. People are still believing that the market is because we were still expecting more information that we believe will be positive to the economy, and those are the things that fundamentals still look good.
Okay. So I believe in the Nigerian exchange group, there were good names in terms of gaining increase in share price. We're talking about Charms, we're talking about Omatech Ventures. Omatech Ventures experienced a decrease, but we have some companies like Champion Breweries, PZ Cousins, they also experienced decrease in their value share prices. What do you think is really responsible for that?
And the second quarter report is about people are expecting the second quarter report, and like what you have the first quarter report has sent a kind of signals toward that the second quarter, and so these are the people are already taking position in this. Especially people are looking at they are not even looking at the value, they're looking at a moderate stock, undervalued prices stock, and those things, they're trying to take position in such a way that they can take advantage of the movement, because the positive, like I said, the positive sentiment is still going on, and people are still relying much on this particular trend to be able to make money. And look at the sectorial and the banking were not that impressive yesterday. The industrial goods were, if you look at most of like Fidelity, Access, UBA, down the lost point, except for Jais and Unity Bank. And look at the other one. The consumer goods are very fantastic yesterday. And likewise, the oil and gas, and it gained about plus 0.9.4. And if you look at the market, the highlight of the market indices, the indicators show that Austria index is about 65,669,000 points, and which is about plus 1.5 basis points. And you can these are things that the investor look at. That okay, the market now is where I can really trade. And not only that, it's where, not that we have, and depending on the kind of investors you are, it might be a passive investor, but the active investors now are taking this advantage, be able to reshape their portfolio. You need to rebalance your portfolio, which sector you are based on the fundamentals you have. So those are the things that is happening in the market now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lateef Jimoh, for your time on this segment. We'll go on a break now. When we come back, we'll have the acting president of the Association of Meter Manufacturers in Nigeria. They have written a petition to the government, as regards the second phase of the National Mass Metering Project. And what they are saying, what this association is saying, is that the bidding process does not favor local manufacturers. We'll hear all about that when we come back from this break. Welcome back to Business Insight on Souk News. At this time, we'll move straight to the acting president of the Association of Meter Manufacturers of Nigeria. I'm talking about Engineer Ademola Agoro. He joins us via Zoom. We're here to talk about the National Mass Metering Program, the second phase, and how this affects the bidding process, how it affects local manufacturers as against foreign manufacturers of meters. Engineer Agoro, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Engineer Agoro, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. So please tell us about the phase 2 of the National Mass Metering Program. What is this supposed to mean for local manufacturers of meters? What is this supposed to mean for local businesses, Nigerian businesses, and or electricity users generally in the country? The second phase of the National Mass Metering Program. Tell us. Okay, so technical issues there. Our technical group team is trying to work on that. But hold on, Engineer Agoro, while we fix that. Meanwhile, let me give you an update of that once again. I mentioned earlier that the Association of Meter Manufacturers of Nigeria, AMN, has launched a formal protest against the bidding process for the supply and installation of 1.2 million smart electricity meters to 11 distribution companies. They are saying that, according to the, bidding order that they saw, a good number of things along the line are supposed to be done in foreign currencies. And of course, they are saying this will highly discourage local manufacturers. And they also want a situation where the bidding process and the process generally is stopped until the government can ensure that even if foreign meter manufacturers are coming in, they must work with the local manufacturers. They're saying if this is not fixed, it will only encourage local manufacturers to import when they are supposed to actually really manufacture these meters locally, for the benefit of Nigerians. But let us go on a short break. When we get back, we'll talk more on this. Welcome back to Business Insight. Once again, I am Olaoluwa Awe, and before we went on that short break, we were talking with Engineer Ademola Agoro of the Association of Meter Manufacturers of Nigeria, and we're talking about the phase 2 of the National Mass Metering Program. You know, this association have, some reservations about the way things are being done right now. And let me welcome back Engineer Ademola Agoro. Welcome back, Engineer. Yes, I believe we have a better audio now. So please tell us about the phase 2 of this metering program. What is it supposed to mean for Nigerians, for Nigerian businesses and electricity users?
Well, like I said, I cannot talk about phase 2 without starting from phase 0 and phase 1. Under phase 0, there's a 1 million meter that was delivered by the MAPS and the meter manufacturer to cover the 1 million metering gap. This was funded by CBN. Then award was given to about 43 local manufacturers for the supply and installation of 4 million meters. But that should be the phase 1. But this award was stalled because there's no funding for the phase 1. Phase 2 was supposed to be 1,250,000 meters to the NESI at a cost of $155 million. So a bid process was instituted, but the basic issue we have is the conditions of the bid requirement. Under it, you said that there are 5 lots, and the bid security for each of the lots ranges between $340,000 to $450,000. Apart from that, they requested for a canal capacity for between lot 1 and 5, ranging between the $4,465,000 and $5,885,000. And for you to even participate on a joint venture, you must meet and provide evidence of 30% of some of this capacity. And again, the average turnover of each of the lots is between $26 million and $35 million. Specific experience required should be between 5 years for lot 1, and you must have supplied in the last 10 years 500,000 meters and 250,000 NDS system. When you look at all these programs, our perspective as a local manufacturer is that this makes it difficult for many Nigerian companies, based on that we are operating in a difficult economic environment, non-availability of forests. Despite of that, we still continue to install meters under phase 0, and based on the capacity assessment that was done for us by the NEC independent body, we aggregate all the local manufacturers in Nigeria have about 5 million capacity. So that is why we are saying that they need to look for them to encourage local manufacturing. There's a need to look at this bid process by the government so that the benefit that we have gained might not be put to shame. Thank you.
Yes, Engineer Ademola Agoro, what exactly do you want the government to do specifically in this case to encourage the local manufacturers of prepaid meters?
What happened is that based on this bid requirement, one of the things that they said is that the foreign companies will bring in that meter as a fully built. Apart from that, they will enjoy what we call import duty exception from the federal government. That makes them very more competitive than the local manufacturer. And we are even told that if you are going to participate in this bid process, we are going to be paid in Naira. Why is only the foreign company that can be paid in dollar? What we are asking the government to do is for them to bring this item in the form of an SKD so that it will give room. When I say for any company that is bringing anything, at least the local manufacturers in Nigeria will have capacity to be able to couple this item instead of bringing in as a fully built meter. Okay. And any foreign company that's going to participate should have a joint venture agreement with the local manufacturer. We are not against the World Bank metering process. We are only against the condition. So we know the government, there's a lot of meeting gap in Nigeria. We are ready to work with any company, any organization to be able to solve it. But if this World Bank project is allowed to go like this, it's going to cause most of the local manufacturers to lose their jobs, and they are going to sack a lot of staff.
Okay, Engineer Agoro, just to understand how relevant local meter manufacturers are, in this sector. You mentioned earlier that your capacity, in Nigeria, you can produce about 5 million meters. And we also want to understand the relationship you have with distribution companies, because for those who really don't understand how this works, I understand that the National Mass Metering Program is a program where the government ensures that meters get to the final users at little or no cost, as against the meter asset provider scheme, where they have to buy the meter. So the whole idea is to ensure a seamless transfer of these prepaid meters, from the manufacturers and the distribution companies to the end users. But I understand that there is some sort of relationship between you and the distribution companies, because from the conversations I've had with distribution companies, they say the meter manufacturers are actually the ones, who bring in these meters, who couple these meters, who also install the meters and address most of the issues that have to do with meters. Is that true? And how exactly do you work with the distribution companies?
Yeah, thank you very much. Like you said, meter manufacturers have been working with a lot of the distribution companies in Nigeria. Like the meters in Nigeria has to be certified by NEMSA. All the meters that we manufacture in Nigeria has NEMSA certification. Then in terms of maintenance, all our meters comes based on the metric code, come with 10 years warranty. The meters being manufactured in Nigeria have been fully tested, and we have capacity to maintain these meters locally. The issue here is that we are not against the government process of metering the populace through the phase 2. But what we are against is that this is a loan that the Nigerian government is going to repay back to the World Bank. Our concern is that why are you exporting our business? If this phase 2 is allowed to go the way it is by bringing a fully built meter, you are only using the loan to enrich other countries' manufacturers. We are saying we are happy with to participate in this phase 2. We have capacity as a local meter manufacturer to do this. Instead of bringing this meter on a fully built, let anybody that is coming procure a SKD. Then they should make sure that any foreign company must have a local partner as a JV. It's not the responsibility of the local to now couple this meter together, provide the installation, and provide the support for these meters. That is what we are saying.
Okay, so away from the National Mass Metering Program now, we just want to have a general idea, of what local manufacturing of prepaid meters looks like in Nigeria. So what are the challenges you face in your manufacturing and supply chain? We need to talk about the challenges. We need to talk about the level of government involvement. How has the government been able to help the manufacturers so far? But let's start with the challenges you face.
Well, I will either prefer to start with how the government has helped.
Oh,
so that
go
before
ahead.
I go into under phase 0, like I said, the federal government funded 1 million meter. Through that process, a lot of companies now started investing in backward integration. I can tell you today, we have a lot of companies in Nigeria we have some companies that are OEM, they can manufacture meter from the point of design to component level. We have companies that have a CKD stator. CKD is a completely lockdown of about 16 parts from anywhere in the world, and be able to put this meter together and program it for the use of the distribution company. We have some companies that what they can only do is about 6 parts. We call them SKD company. So when you combine all this capacity together, Nigeria has capacity, as at last year, NEC says that our capacity is about 5 billion. But I can tell you, with support from the government, we can deliver 8 million meters within a year. The challenge we have is on the forest, which is applicable to other areas of business in Nigeria. If we can require support to bring our raw materials in the areas of forest, I can assure you within 1 to 2 years, the metering gap in Nigeria is going to be closed with the level of investment that the local media have invested in this country. And we challenge even this man, everybody to come and visit our factory so that you can verify yourself what we are saying. A lot of our members have invested heavily, and we believe that in the process of developing and increasing the capacity of meter production in Nigeria. So we believe that government should support us by patronizing our business.
Thank you very much for that. One of the reasons we believe that using local manufacturers of meters is because sometimes when these gadgets or equipment have faults, it's easier for us to have companies that are on ground, Nigerian companies, who can quickly address the issue. So take us through the process of maybe fixing faulty meters or meter installation. Basically, meter installation and the process of fixing faulty meters.
Well, the issue is that when you say, because just like we said, if you are a manufacturer of an item and you are based locally, it's easier for you to repair the meter when it is faulty. So no matter any problem on the meter after it has been installed, there are some basic problems. What are the things that cause problem on the meter? If the meter is rated for a single phase and you find out that the current that is flowing in the house is more than the 60 amp, that it can damage some part of the meter. So because we are the one that coupled this meter together, and because this meter comes with 10 years warranty, it's easier for us to retrieve the meter, to change the damaged parts, reprogram the meter, and the customer starts enjoying the meter. There's nothing that can happen to a meter that cannot be resolved within the capacity of the local manufacturer. Meter is the same thing everywhere. And there's some issues we might have is on the communication. If the communication of the meter fails, we can repair those by changing it, and so that we can replace the part, because we have spare parts for the plant that we are installing, and there's a body called NEMSA. They regulate us every year. They come to our facilities to check our processes. So there is a defined process, there's a method statement, and there's a quality controls that will be put in place for you in the process of the manufacturing and the installation of the meter. So to answer you, those are the processes that is put in place for both installation and putting the meters together. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Before we close the show today, let's talk about your association, the Association of Meter Manufacturers of Nigeria. Is this an open association? Are you interested in having more members? And for people that want to go into this line of work, what exactly is the process of owning a meter manufacturing company in Nigeria?
Okay, there are two processes. The first thing that all our members must have a manufacturing certificate from NEC. The NEC is the one that issued those certificates. Apart from that, you must be able to go to the Ministry of Industry to have their backward integration certificate. Then from the Ministry of Finance, you must be enlisted as part of the people that can be a bona fide certificate manufacturer of meters in Nigeria. Once you have these three certificates, the association is open to you. We are encouraging many people to invest in the meter manufacturing. If for me to bring, just to give you an idea of the level of investment, for me to bring a part to couple 20,000 meters alone, I need $1 million.
Wow.
So if you are saying now that we have a meeting gap of 8 million, It will show you the level of investment that is required. So even for the materials alone, talk about the manufacturing. And these are rated in dollars. So if I'm bringing 100,000 meters to Nigeria, parts, I need about $200 million. So that's I need about $20 million, really. So that's the problem. It's a heavy capital intensive manufacturing, and we have capacity not only to manufacture meter, we have equipment that manufacture plastic parts of meters, meter boxes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ademola Agoro. We have definitely picked a lot from what you mentioned today. Of course, you just mentioned now that meter manufacturers in Nigeria, if they get the appropriate government support, can even manufacture 8 million meters. According to him, they're already doing about 5 million. That is good to do. Thank you very much for your time on the program today. And that is where we wrap things up on Business Insight. I am Olaoluwa Awe. Join us tomorrow, same time, same channel for another interesting edition.
Thanks for staying tuned. Now, there have been various talks about Nigeria diversifying its economy, but as it still stands, oil is the major source of revenue for Nigeria. And so we're looking at the oil and gas sector this morning. And joining us via Zoom is Olabode Shoumi, who is the senior legal advisor to the Senate President and consultant to House Committee on Gas, National Assembly. He's worked in consulting capacity with KPMG, Business and Technology Research with Ishikels Limited, and also event management with iTech Africa, freelance writing for Business Day and the Guardian newspaper, tactical and strategic marketing and media relations with Ericsson. Now, before we bring in our guests via Zoom, oil and gas sector, several issues, several challenges surrounding that sector. And for years, the government has been trying to make it one sector that, as it produces revenue, it gets every revenue that accrues from it. But we found that there are several other reasons that led to revenue leakages and revenue shortages. Key of them is oil theft and insecurity in regions where oil is, crude oil is gotten from.
Yeah, the issue of oil theft is key. And I think, I don't know if it can be said to be the biggest threat we have to that particular sector. Because, just take a look at this. It was reported on the 14th of April this year that Nigeria lost 16.25 trillion naira to oil theft in 12 years. Now, that sounds like mere figures, okay? If you have an average of 2,000 naira being spent by a Nigerian per meal on food, say like, okay, per meal you spend 2,000 naira, meaning in a day you will spend like 6,000 naira. That same amount of money lost to oil theft will feed 626,929 Nigerians for 12 solid years. Now, if you consider that we live in a country where at least 100 children die of malnutrition on the hour in Nigeria, then these people are committing heinous crime against humanity, because if we had that particular fund and it is not being stolen and it is being injected into the economy, we'll go a long way in feeding Nigerians and even funding some other amenities and infrastructures. We will not be where we are today if we're actually making use of the proceeds of oil and we're getting value for what we're digging out of the ground.
Yeah, a few years ago, about 2 to 3 years ago, Nigeria was producing over 2 million barrels of oil per day, of crude oil per day. And the target was for it to get to about 2.9 million barrels per day. But it is saddening to know that we currently produce just a little over 1,000 million barrels per day. And that's because of oil shortage, oil theft. So the harm that oil theft is doing to Nigeria's revenue, it cannot actually be quantified. You just talked about the number of Nigerians that could have been fed in 12 years, but the money lost from the oil revenue due to oil theft. Children dying of hunger, they would have benefited so much. But this goes to the pockets of a few persons who have decided to sabotage the common economy of Nigeria. We'll be looking at how does this sabotage take place, how it happens, and how it can be handled. Remember that a surveillance, a private investigator was contracted by the federal government to look into these issues. But still, we're having the issue of oil theft persistent.
It was in the news recently. I think Asari Dokubo, accused the military of being behind some of these oil thefts in the creek. He asked a simple question: how many Nigerians have the capability, so to speak, to really go into the creeks and go onto the high seas and steal oil the way it is being done? Okay, that's an allegation, okay, and they can come to their own defenses. But the fact is that the Nigerian government is not really resting on its oars. We're trying every day to, correct the anomaly. We still remember the recent PIA that was passed in 2021, which is being described as the most ambitious and most audacious reform that has been, attempted in the oil sector. It is meant to bring some sanity into the sector, but 2 years down the line, I wouldn't know if we're winning the war, because it appears to be a permanent ailment that will, besiege our oil sector. So it begs to reason, if we really are winning the war against oil theft, and not just theft this time around, there is pipeline vandalism, well, which is still part of theft anyway. And if you look at the effect of that, we know so many communities that have been destroyed. Their ecosystem has been disrupted.
Of course, from pollution, due to the activities of drilling and, you know, like you mentioned, pipeline vandalism and even aging infrastructure, because some of these infrastructure were set up several years ago, and years down the line, some of them have not been changed. Some of them have not actually been improved upon. And so the people who are on the receiving end are the communities around that area. And you know, it also affects their economy, because a lot of them in that area actually are into fishing. That's their means of livelihood. And so when you have the waters polluted, it destroys aquatic life. So what then do you sustain it? It also leads to youth restiveness. And you know that a part of the PIA, which talks about a trust for the communities, those in that area didn't quite like that part, that just 3% goes to them. And so those issues will further increase the acts of vandalism in that area. Because I don't think that people from other areas can just come into a territory that is not yours to begin to do that. So you may have
resource control. Resource control is a big issue, and there are several variables that determine how resources should be controlled. We claim to be operating a federal system of government. We're not, actually, because if we are, then we would factor in resource control as a critical topic of discussion. I know that most of the youth restiveness that we have in the Niger Delta stems from the fact that, okay, people felt it's unjust. We are the ones who are suffering it. If you've been to the Niger Delta and you see the quality of air that has been breathed, go to a place like Warri, you really understand the pains these people are going through. They don't have that clean air as we have in some other parts of the country. And so they feel, okay, our existence is being endangered. Our farms are being destroyed, so we deserve some more. Like I said, it's a legal issue, and a lot of factors must come into play before you can say whether 3% is enough or you need so much more. And that is why we see other states in the country trying to, you know, come into the pool of oil region, because even in the budgetary allocation, there's a particular amount of preference that is being given to those who have oil in their locale.
The 30% derivation.
This is still part of the federal government's effort to, you know, appeal to the sensibilities of those regions whose ecosystems have been damaged. Now, then now comes the issue of corruption. Even the 3% that is being given to, you know, localities where this oil is being, you know, exploited or explored. How well are they spending the money? People are saying the money is being siphoned into private pockets as against being channeled into development of those areas. If you see some communities in the Niger Delta, you will pity them, because you begin to wonder what is happening to the money that's being given to you. That's just it.
Yeah, lots of persons have been fingered in the issue of corruption as it concerns the oil and gas sector, particularly from the area where this crude is mined. You would expect that you will see so much of infrastructure development there. You'd expect that you will see the effect of wealth on them. Wealth in the sense that these are the areas where this wealth that Nigeria lives on comes from. So they should benefit so much from it. But like we know, when there's a lot of bulk passing, when you talk about the leadership in that area, some of them will point fingers to persons in government who are not making it trickle down to the common man there. So it's just an issue of
it is supposed to be a
back and forth
commonwealth
situation, yes.
It's supposed to be a commonwealth, but it has been converted kind of to personal wealth. What is meant for all of us is being shared by some of us or few of us. That is an allegation in the public domain. I heard that our guest is ready for us via Zoom. So we have with us Olabode Showumi, who is the SLA to the Senate President and Consultant House Committee on Gas. That is National Assembly, and he has worked in consulting capacity for KPMG, and then he is a business and tech research. Then he worked with eCheckers at the same time. Okay, I need to confirm if he can hear us Mr. Olabode Showomi, please confirm if you can hear us. All right. Can you please unmute? You are not audible. Can you please unmute yourself? I can't hear you here in the studio.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning. Okay, good morning.
Good morning,
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Good to have you in our studio. Welcome. Yes, before you joined the conversation, we took a deep dive, or let me say a little dive into the issue of oil theft, which is one of the problems bedeviling that oil sector in Nigeria. And I did mention that it was reported that 16.25 trillion naira was siphoned away in terms of oil theft in 12 years. That's a native report. And if you look at the amounts of that particular amount, I did say before you joined us that amount, if you feed a Nigerian 2,000 naira per meal, which is 6,000 naira per day, that amount of money siphoned away in oil theft will feed 626,000 plus Nigerians for 12 solid years. Now, the question is this. Oil theft seems to be a problem that has defied solution. Will it be a permanent problem for us as a country, or are we making progress in winning that war against oil theft? That's my first question to you.
Okay, good morning. I want to make a slight correction. I was the senior legislative aid SLA to the immediate past Senate president. So there's a new National Assembly at the moment. So having said that, to hit the root of the question that you asked, while your analysis is correct in terms of the amount of people that it can feed, but corruption is endemic. So you are not likely to see thefts only in the oil and gas sector. You are likely to see it in education. You are likely to see it in health. You are likely to see it even in sports, where allowances are not paid. So if we are to do that kind of extension, you probably see it everywhere. Having said that, to the question exactly, should we or are we likely to see this thing continuing forever? It's $1 million question, but the simple answer is that no, we should not see these things happening forever. To begin with, all theft is against a system. In other words, there's a system that should normally flow. And when you start to steal or you start to interrupt the system, you are calling for the system to call it into order. So when there's an accounting system, for example, and some people cook the books or they interrupt the books, how do auditors find out who actually stole? They investigate the parts of the system, and where they see discrepancies, the question, and they're able to identify why the theft takes place. It's the same thing for the oil and gas sector. There is a system from exploration to production to transportation to the final destination. So we talk about the upstream, midstream, and downstream sectors. For theft to take place, there has to be an interruption in the system one way or the other. So it is incumbent, it is the responsibility of those who are saddled with managing the industry to ensure that this theft stops. How that will be done is now a different issue. But whether it can be done, the simple answer is yes. Oil theft can be stopped. It's as simple as that.
All right, now what's the critical steps that are being taken by the Nigerian government to promote the expansion of gas infrastructure and also the promotion of gas-based industries? We've seen that some companies have left, some oil exploration companies have left Nigeria. How are we tackling that?
Well, I mean, I cannot speak for government because you just asked what the government will be doing. It's those in government that know what they are doing and what they're likely to do. But having said that, as somebody who's in the industry, I can speak to the signals that the industry is getting and speak to the activities that is happening within the industry. Gas-based industries is one of the anchor points of the Gas Master Plan, which focuses on 4 main areas: LPG, which is your cooking gas. It focuses on gas to power. which is basically power available for gas. It focuses on gas for industry. So that is basically industries that use machines and machinery that uses gas to power them. And of course, gas-based industries, which are industries that use gas as raw material. So you're talking about steel, you're talking about the fertilizer plants, you're talking about methanol. Now, if industries in those areas are leaving, it is hasty generalization to assume that the only reason why they are leaving is gas, because there are a lot of factors that make up an industry or that make an industry to be viable. It's basically saying that if a news station is closing down, the reason why they are closing down is because they cannot get news. I mean, there are so many factors that goes into a business. So if an industry is closing, it would be, rather than being speculative, it would be nice to do a deep dive, ask some questions to those who are leaving, ask some and check it across board to be able to know what the causative factors are. It may even be just mismanagement that is making them to leave. So we cannot speculate to the people who are leaving. We can just we cannot speculate to get right answers. We can only do a deep dive when we have data and verifiable information from them.
Okay, let's talk about the Petroleum Industry Act that was passed in 2021. It has been described, I said earlier, as one of the most audacious bills passed to reform the oil sector in Nigeria and put some sanity and introduce accountability and transparency into the way we operate our oil industry. Okay, it's been 2 years down the line now, and yes, in some quarters it will be said that we are already beginning to see the effects of that particular act that has been passed. But then, let me ask you your judgment. How well are we executing the dictates or the postulates of that particular act to the letters? Are we making any meaningful progress, or is still a long way to go from achieving the desired objectives for which the bill was passed into an act?
Okay, with respect to the when you ask that question, are we making meaningful headway or any meaningful progress? I think the simple answer is yes. But before I start doing an analysis of that, it's important to keep certain things in perspective. An act or a law or a rule, and any rule or any law for that matter, is basically a framework. I mean, say for example, in an organization, there's a rule that people should resume before a certain time, say 8 a.m. If everybody resumes at 8 a.m., that is not going to guarantee you that people will be productive between 8 and 10. But it is a start. It is a framework to allow people to be productive. There are other factors that come that will make people productive. So when you set up an act, like the Petroleum Industry Act, it is a framework. And it's a framework that is to allow transparency, accountability, progress, and attract foreign direct investment. The act itself is not going to enforce transparency. The act in itself is not going to ensure foreign direct investment, but it is a start. Now, in terms of what the law states, the law asked that NNPC, which hitherto was both a regulator and operator, be made a private company and function purely as an operator. And that has happened. The act stipulates that a regulator properly be set up for the industry. In fact, 2 regulators be set up for the industry that will focus purely on regulation and nothing else. That has also happened. The act has stipulated certain parameters for the host funds, that is the funds that is available for developing the host communities. That has happened. The act stipulates that greater interactions occur between the stakeholders in the industry. And that is happening because for the first time, you are having people who have been communicating with each other for years, meeting face to face and getting a greater understanding of each other and how the industry can function. So in terms of what any act would do for a 2-year-old act, I think it has done credibly well, because we need to also put in perspective how we were before in the industry and where we are now. So what people want, and which they have a right to want also, is a perfect industry. But perfection is not something that happens within 1 or 2 years, especially in an environment like Nigeria. So there are many factors that need to be in place for the desired perfection to actually happen. So in simple terms, has the law helped in achieving what it seeks to achieve? The answer is yes, because we must always remember every law has its limitation. Has it created the framework for a better industry? The answer is a big capital yes.
Okay, you just mentioned that the PIA is a framework. Now, good to know that we've got into the start point of having the framework. So what are the factors that will ensure transparency and foreign direct investments in the oil and gas sector? What are those factors?
Culture of the people, and there are some things that have to change in terms of the way we do things. I mean, this is not the time or the thing to go into greater details. Another thing is also greater transparency. I mean, many people may not put it in perspective, but rule of law is an economic fundamental. In other words, when we do contracts, when we make agreements, we should honor them. Because when you don't honor them, other people, I mean, you may get away with one deal, but other people will take cue from it. Who wants to bring his money into an environment where when he has a dispute with you, he is not sure that justice will be served? So everywhere, rule of law is an economic fundamental. Those are things that need to be in place. Then, of course, there has to be a greater publicity of the things. And the truth is that as a government and as a people, not just government, as a people, we need to take certain very strong stance on what we really believe in when it comes to energy transition. But that's also another discussion for another time. So there are a number of industry-related issues, some of which are technical. There are some that are also cultural in terms of how the kind of corporate culture we have existing, and some other things as socio-economic culture. A number of all these things need to change for us to be more friendly and more attractive to the world at large.
Okay, so I get that. It's a complex interwoven nature of the whole process that matters. We're talking about so many dependencies that can actually ensure transparency in that sector as you have submitted it. Now let's talk about we'll talk about the arrival of Dangote Refinery as part of the effort of the government to promote local content development in the sector. Now, the whole idea of local content is about ensuring that more Nigerians, whether as investors or workers, participate in the development of the oil sector, the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, at least with respect to that oil and gas sector. Now, we have the likes of Dangote Refinery. What more are we doing to promote local content development? Maybe that are not known to us, that are not, critical stakeholders in that particular sector, that you think, yes, Nigerians should, have a cause to cheer about in years to come.
Okay, so there's a difference between sector and public sector. Government can encourage private sector, but it is the private people that will decide if they want to do business. I mean, government, for example, can set up tax incentives that if you go into this line of business, we will not tax you for 3 years. But it is still people that will decide whether they want to do those kind of business. Dangote Refinery, as far as I know it, is a private incentive. It is not government. So it is an individual who has worked in collaboration with government and in collaboration with certain external factors to set up his own company. That always needs to be kept in perspective for Nigerians.
All right, we just lost connection with Olabode Shomi, but so we'll have that back later. But looking at the infrastructure, aging infrastructure in the Nigerian oil and gas sector, we were talking about that a while ago.
Yes, before you joined the conversation.
Yes.
Yes. So the whole idea is, if we have a system that works, part of why it works is because there are processes that have been factored into its setup in the first place to ensure that, yes, what needs to be done in terms of upgrade gets done. That is assuming that the system works as a whole without disruption, as Mr. Olabode said earlier. But in the oil and gas sector, I wouldn't want to say with boldness that it has worked without disruption. We know that we have quite a number of local refineries here, and they're not working. Fine. We are seeing the likes of Dangote refinery coming on board, which is a good step. But people are asking, if the system is working, why don't we have the other refineries working?
Yes, even the modular refineries, why don't we have a combination of production from every part? You have the refineries that we have put at maximum capacity, and then the modular refineries are also producing their own quota. That would help to shore up enough quantity of petroleum products in the country.
Yes. So beyond that, Nigeria is moving towards self-sufficiency or alternative. Okay, he's back. We're getting signal that we have our guest back. Mr. Olabode, can you hear us? Please confirm. Mr. Olabode. Okay, since we still have that particular technical issue there, I hope we have you back, because there are still more questions to ask. This is oil and gas sector. It is still the mainstay of our economy, and we can't ask enough questions on the
About
show
it.
about it.
Okay, so we have the good news that Olabode is back with us. Are you there?
Yes, good morning.
Okay,
everyone.
so
I'm here.
good to know that you're there. Now let's look at investments to modernize and also upgrade the aging infrastructure in the oil and gas sector. Are we
Yes.
having enough investment and effort towards modernizing and also upgrading aging infrastructure in the oil and gas sector?
Okay, I think it's important to note that investment within the oil and gas sector is not something you can do from your savings. It's the nature of investments everywhere in the world, that it's developmental or very huge corporations or governments that invest in it. Unfortunately, because of the way that we have done our sovereign wealth fund over the years, we don't have enough within our sovereign wealth fund to be able to invest in infrastructure. So we have to depend on outsiders. So by that factor, we are limited to the option of going to get investors from outside of Nigeria. And because of the global geopolitics with respect to sustainability and energy transition, there are a number of people who put very stringent conditions for them investing, or they just plainly don't want to invest in oil and gas. So that is the situation we find ourselves. However, for some other countries, like the Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, they have significant funds in their sovereign wealth funds, so they are able to invest in infrastructure. So we are who we are. We have found ourselves in the situation that we find ourselves. We just have to continue to be innovative, to look for options to funding our infrastructure. I mean, one of the things that did happen was that the AFDB partnered with a private firm to do a floating LNG, for investment in a floating LNG plant somewhere off the coast of Bayelsa. So that's an innovation that can take place. Maybe we can talk to the South Africans. They also have some amount of money. Maybe the Egyptians could be interested. But the point is that we have to look for ideas outside the box. So basically, because we just can't give up. It's as simple as that.
Okay. Yes. We know that renewing infrastructure or constructing new ones calls for cost. It comes at a particular cost. And collaboration with foreign direct investors is actually key. But it is being said that in Nigeria, it is facing a lot of challenges because we're not having that amount of FDI input as we would have expected? What are these challenges that we're facing that are actually making us not able to attract FDI input in Nigeria, and what way forward can we, talk?
Well, when it comes to investment, the challenges to investment is basically risk. So how risk averse is the person? How familiar are they with the market? Have they successfully done business there before? And then when it comes to the project itself, it's also the security risk is one. I mean, the fact that people localities disturb those who are investing in or building plants is a risk. So basically, why would I want to come to Nigeria where the host community is going to be holding me to ransom when I can go to Guyana where the people will be laying roses for me on the floor? So those are considerations. So when it comes to the factors for deciding where people invest, they are multifactorial. I mean, rule of law is also another risk that people want to consider. So basically, we must know that there's a certain pool of funds that is available for investment in the oil and gas sector globally. And that pool of funds, if it doesn't go to point A, to go to point B. So for the people that have the pool of funds, they have to look at what are the things that, where is the thing going to be most effective or rewarding for them. But what I'm basically saying is that we have to go outside the traditional system. We have to look for other ways of aggregating funds for us to fund our projects. Because if we are going to rely on the foreign direct investment, like you put it, we probably will not get anything done. And at the end of the day, we'll be engaging in blame games. So rather than doing blame games, rather than pointing fingers, let us look at options forward. I mean, that would be my own submission in the area.
Okay, now let's look at environmental responsibility towards areas where oil exploration is done. There have been talks about cleanup in some parts. How's that going?
I wouldn't know the updates, but responsibility is two ways. So it's like a husband and a wife. And every business relationship too is like a marriage between two parties. So while there are responsibilities from those who are operating, those who are executing those things, there are also responsibilities from the host communities. So with respect to the cleanup and all that, I'm not in a best position to know that, because you have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. In other words, a project-by-project basis, because it is not everywhere we have pollution, and it is not everywhere where you have issues with those communities, and it is not everywhere where there are pollution that there has not been remediation. So we just basically have to look at the case-by-case basis to be able to identify what is happening in the scenario.
Okay, so let's look at our own domestic need for oil as against our export obligations. How are we striking the balance? We know that we're not refining enough here for our use, but even the ones that are brought in, we still take some as a matter of export obligation to maybe neighboring African countries. How are we striking the balance between our own domestic consumption need and the export obligation?
I'm not sure we have an export obligation for finished products. I'm not aware of that. The best that probably happened is maybe crude oil obligation to some parties, which could include one or two countries. But in terms of finished products, I'm not sure we have such an export obligation. But I stand to be corrected. It possibly could have been signed, but I'm not sure such an obligation exists.
So going forward, what do you think should be the plan and strategies for the oil and gas sector, particularly regarding exploration, production?
Well, I believe that that's what we've been talking about, because we talk about plans for exploration and all that. But if you want me to speak to maybe certain things that may need to happen for the progress of Nigeria, we need more gas for both locally, even and for exports. So everybody knows we have gas, but when you look at it, there is not gas available. So it's a case of being surrounded by river water but there isn't enough processing plants to turn the river water into drinking water. So you have water everywhere, but none available to drink. Now, for us, for the gas that we have in the ground to be used in a way that is profitable, it needs to be processed. So it needs to go through what you call a gas processing plant. We don't have enough of those plants, and we also don't have enough of upstream investment where there are drilling efforts that bring up gas. So whichever way, for us to start making progress, we need to invest in gas processing plants, which are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's not something you can bring out of your back pocket and start. The projects has to be structured for financing, and it's also going to be tied to gas that is going to come from exploration. So that means we have to start having new exploration projects that will focus either only on gas or that will focus on both oil and gas. So, those are the areas to look into. And of course, definitely infrastructure. We need infrastructure across the country. And I'm talking about gas infrastructure by pipelines and related, for there to be even development. Because one of the focuses of the gas master plan in terms of how it can be structured is that you can actually have a cottage industry in every local government. So by cottage industry, we're talking about a small scale industry that will be able to use the raw materials of what is produced. They will use as raw material what is produced in that locality. Say, for example, if the place they produce a lot of mangoes, you can have a mango fruit processing plant that will produce mango juice and a number of other things. So it takes the mangoes from that area and it is the fish. What processes that will be gas. So basically, we need more investment in upstream. We need investment in the midstream, which is the processing plants, and of course, for pipeline infrastructure, which is also midstream as well. Those should be the focus areas for the industry moving forward.
Okay, Mr. Olabode, on a very last note, you know so much about this sector. You are part of the sector in a particular context. Now, I want you to scan the horizon for Nigeria as a country. What do you see on the horizon in the next 5 years with respect to our oil and gas sector? Positive? I want to assume.
Well, if we are to look at, first of all, in fairness to the current administration, I think they were the only ones that gave practical insights into what could happen in the industry. And I'm speaking from a knowledge perspective. Because one of the things that was said during the town hall meeting, the only town hall meeting that the current president had, was that they plan to build a pipeline that will run across the southeast and connect it with the southwest. Whether they actually do that or not, the fact that they thought about it and could say it means that there is some knowledge on how the industry works and how it can be profitable. So the implication of having a pipeline that will run across the southeast and the southwest is that all those little cottage industries that you have in Aba and all those places and environs can actually be scaled up and using gas infrastructure as something that will process it. But more importantly, the process of building that pipeline means that there will be job available for the boys across board in that area. So I want to believe that based on what they have said, if they pursue it, but if they pursue half of it, we'll be smiling at the end of that 5 years. So I think
very
that's
much
the best way
appreciate
to
your
summarize
time with us this morning, Olabode Sowunmi, who is an oil and gas consultant. Thank you very much for being on the show. And now we'll take a quick break, and exchange continues after this time.
Good to know you're still watching us. This is Early Exchange on Souk News. So we move over to the issue of the repatriation of the Abacha loot, which is in court. While we won't try to play the role of legal icons, well, we're not anyway, it's still a topic in the public domain.
Of course
And
it is.
I think it calls for some kind of discussion. We read in the news some hours ago that the Federal High Court in Abuja asked the federal government to account for $5 billion that was recovered from Abacha's loot. There is this issue of transparency about how the fund is being used, to what purpose is it being put to, whether it's for developmental
Projects
issues
that
or
has been
some are
earmarked
saying,
for.
some have the fear that if we're not careful, that we're not putting the government on its toes, possibility of looting the loot for the sake of argument is right.
Yes, according to the BBC, from data it gathered from the federal government, World Bank, and Transparency International, of that $5 billion that the late Nigerian head of state, General Sani Abacha, looted from public funds, $3.65 billion of that have been recovered so far in 24 years. Okay. And so Sarah, a Nigerian rights group, have actually filed a lawsuit to which the judgment is that the current government, talking about the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, should ask that past governments give account of how much they've received as a repatriation from the looted funds and what they've been put into use. Like you just mentioned, everyone is interested in this because you're a Nigerian, I'm a Nigerian, and
and in the other is also a Nigerian, and that's why he's here with us again to discuss this.
Whenever something like this happens, it's a commonwealth that is being talked about here. And so the interest is, what has this money been used for? What project has it been mapped for? Let's know how far the monies have been put to use.
Well, I'm not asking you to tell us what it has been used for, because you're not part of those who have used it. But then speak to the issue.
But what's your opinion on Sarah demanding for transparency and accountability?
I think I'm not a lawyer, so I won't be able to look at the technicalities of the issues at stake. But I would want to speak to the moral implication of the ruling of the High Court in Abuja on the current regime of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You see, because in the public space, there is a whole lot of trust deficit.
Yes.
And the public don't have confidence in government and its officials. And what this particular ruling of the Abuja High Court has placed a huge moral burden on what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu told the whole Nigeria on his inaugural address, that his regime is going to be fully based on the rule of law. And here is a judgment that is facing his government. Now, it's not that his government has actually had anything to do with the Abacha loot, but you know government is a continuum.
Yes, definitely.
Successive Nigerian government leaders had opportunity to enter into covenants with other states or countries where these allegedly stolen money were warehoused. Sometime in 2022, we saw this argument back and forth when about 322 million US dollar was to be repatriated from Switzerland. And the Switzerland government were requesting that they don't want this money spent on any other thing, but it should be used for the poorest of the poor. And the government entered into an agreement with Switzerland. And of course, when some also were to be repatriated from America, there was also a purported agreement between the United States of America and the Nigerian government. What use should this loot that was warehoused in the country should be put into? And I think what Serap had done was to go to court to say, well, if government enter into a covenant with other countries on behalf of its citizens, it's also the right of the citizens of Nigeria to know what kind of agreement was signed, whether they are detrimental to the Nigerian interest or is all to the advantage of the repatriating country. Now, is that all the money that is in there? Now, even the ones that have been recovered by successive regime, how has it been used? How much actually was stolen? And of course, these issues went to court in 2020. Serap sued the government, the Attorney General, and the Finance Minister were joined in that suit to actually tell where this looted fund, how much was stolen, and how the one that has been recovered so far has been used. And this is what was tested in court, because it was based on the Freedom of Information Act that was passed in 2011, which actually gave the responsibility and obligation to public officers to keep adequate record of government business and dealings. And then, of course, it was mandatory for them to present it for public interest when it is to public interest. And this is what is being tested. And now Sarah got a judgment. And now is asking the current regime to show us what has actually been done. But I think in the argument from the council to the federal government actually said, oh, we don't have records of how much was stolen. And then, of course, we also don't have the record with us of what has been received so far. And the ruling says, well, that argument is neither here nor there, because it's not standing on any serious legal ground, because in the Act itself, that Section 7 of the Act actually has said, in case that somebody is asking for an information and it's not in your disposal, it is your responsibility as an agency of government to transfer that same request to the agency that has the information.
Okay.
So that's the point of the ruling. So the Federal Ministry of Finance said they don't have the information, but it's incumbent on them by the provision of the Freedom of Information Act that they should transmit that request by Sarah to the agency that has the record. So what will seem to be happening here is that record is not anywhere, and that will not be acceptable international best practice, that government businesses have to be actually and properly documented. Now, those are the facts around the case. But what is the moral burden for the new regime? The moral burden here is the fact that there's a court order, and the government must be seen to be obeying the order of the court. Because a lot of the investing public are still skeptical of bringing in funds into the economy.
Yes.
And the real reason why people can't pull in funds into the economy, when we're talking about issues of foreign direct investment, is people are not sure of the judicial system or the mechanism for dispute resolution, how quickly it will be. You can get into a system and you put your money in the system, and then issues are arising or cases come out of them. Can you trust the courts to do the right thing? And if the court will do the right thing, will you also trust the government that they have the wherewithal to actually obey the court? This is what is at stake here. Now, once people can see that government obey its laws and the ruling of its judicial institution, people's confidence in the economy will grow.
Okay.
A lot of people will want to put in money because they are sure that even if cases come out of such investment, they are sure to some certain degree that justice can be served.
Okay, this is more like a litmus test for the Tinubu's presidency, because
Oh, yes.
silence here is not an option,
No.
and self-defense is equally not an option. Even if the legal system does not find the, is it local standing they call it, to nail you, in the court of public opinion, you will be nailed if you're silent or if you self-defend. That's the idea.
Yeah, but you see, the beauty of the whole case is the fact that the Freedom of Information Act also gives government the liberty to say, oh, there are some information that we cannot release. If they have issues to do with security, national security, if it has to do with issues that have to deal with third party, that you don't want to disclose their information. Now, if government is not satisfied with the ruling of the Federal High Court, they can actually appeal this judgment also.
Okay.
Because it's not a final verdict. If there's a ground, a sufficient ground, why government should not give SERAP
That information.
this information they are requesting for, then of course they should go and test it, maybe in an appeal court, to be sure that this judgment, we were challenging it because we feel that the information in question is again a certain section of the act. That's what the act says. The only ground that government will not be able to give that information is that government must be sure that there is a provision in that act that empower government not to release that information. If that case was not properly argued by the previous regime, the onus is lying on the current regime, the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Finance, whoever their legal representative is, to go to appeal this judgment and say, okay, we have a ground that was not properly argued, and if there are sufficient evidence, of course, maybe the judgment can also be overturned.
No, but looking at it now, how will this development impact further repatriation of looted funds? Not just Abacha loot, but looted funds by public office holders. If the ones that are so far being repatriated, there are questions as to the judicious use, would that encourage further repatriation?
Yeah, but that's actually been the issues, and that was the real reason why Singapore Switzerland were actually hesitant in the first place. That the repatriated looted fund were also relooted by other people. And so they actually made the government to enter into a covenant to say, okay, there's no transparency in the process of government. You see, because these issues are not issues that should be really giving anybody any headache. If government is run properly and governance is actually giving prominence in the things we do, if funds come into the Consolidated Revenue Fund or is housed by the federal government, now when you are doing your budgeting or you are financing your budgeting, you should be able to actually see this is the money that comes in from this area. This is the money that comes in from this sources of your revenue that is funding your budget, and that should not be something that government should be secret about. But the issue here is because we are not really very sure, and this is why SERAP had to take this case to court. And we have a right to know that this money actually were repatriated and they were actually put into a good public use. Because the former one that was repatriated from the US was actually said that it is going to be used to fix the Lagos-Ibadan road, the second Niger bridge, and some basic infrastructure.
Yeah, that is what the former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, actually said that in the agreement with the US, that was what President Buhari actually directed that the funds should go into for. But we're waiting to see what the Ministry of Finance comes up with regarding areas to which the recovered loot have been used for. Now, SERAP, in its responsibility as a right group, seemed to pursue from one case to the other issues that borders on the rights of Nigerians. Do you think this is an encouragement for other civil society groups to begin to push forward to demand accountability of government?
Yeah, you see, it's unfortunate that, like they also said, especially Section 2 of the Nigerian Constitution, we're supposed to have given the economic right to the Nigerian people. They say it's not justiciable. In other words, you cannot hold government accountable, not able to provide what that Constitution expects government to do for a citizen. So you can't take them to court. But I think what SERAP is actually set out to do, because by their name, socio-economic rights and responsibility. You see, that is what it is. So we want to see a government that is responsible, that also guarantee the rights and the privileges of the taxpayers. One of the arguments that we have in our claim when people talk about evasion of tax and people not wanting to declare tax is that people can actually see what government is doing with tax. I pay tax, I don't have good roads. I pay tax, I don't have water. I pay tax, I don't have good health care. So what does government do with our taxes? What is the moral obligation upon me to pay further tax? Now, when people see what government is doing with revenues that is collected and generated, and some few people are not just lining their pocket with it or siphoning it elsewhere, people will be encouraged to pay more tax.
Definitely.
And then there will be more revenue at the disposal of government to continue to provide and maintain the basic infrastructure that states require.
So
Again.
you spoke earlier about this fund, that if it comes into the economy, even after the budget has been prepared for a particular year, next year it should be captured.
Yes.
This speaks to the fact that there has to be a system whereby any form of injection that comes midway into budget execution is captured properly. Now, we don't seem to have that system in place, either to monitor injections when they come in, or to even stipulate clearly what they should be used for. We seem to be reactionary instead of being proactive in Nigeria here, and that seems to be the bane of this particular issue here. What do you think about that? Systems and frameworks for us to capture injections and probably leakages, as the case may be.
Yeah, but because this has actually been the real issue, because government business is shrouded in a whole lot of secrecy. There's no transparency, there's no accountability from the side of the public officers. And of course, every process is manual, and you have human interference and interventions that will not allow you to actually see clearly what is happening. And this again is to speak to the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that there must be an emphasis on e-governance.
I accept.
We must have to emphasize it, because that's the only way to fight corruption. For me, that's the way to drain the swamp so that the alligator can run away. We should stop fighting the alligator in the swamp, because when you are fighting alligators in the swamp, of course, you don't have the capacity to drive them away. Now, the best way to fight the alligator in the swamp is to drain the swamp. So when e-governance is employed, all public revenue, the president in the comfort of his office can see what is coming into the coffers of government and what is going out and for what purpose. It will just be on the dashboard. And this will make for transparency, this will make for accountability, it will make it simple. So we know what fund is coming into government and we know what is coming out. And then government can now be able to explain to the citizen, we can't do SY because this is what we have received so far and this is what is going out. Doesn't it surprise you to see that, for example, over the whole long period of time, we can't even realize what NNPC is earning, what is going on before their privatization.
Yeah.
So these are huge issues.
Opacity.
That we couldn't even tell how many liters of petrol we're consuming daily or what we're importing. These are issues that speaks to the integrity of public officers. So this government has a moral burden to demonstrate that is going to toe a different line from his predecessor and come to equity with very clean hands. That if the law requires us to disclose information, and we have a court order now that is saying release and publish in public domain what actually was done, I think the government should obey the order of the court.
Now back to the issue of rights group advocating for accountability or demanding for accountability. Let's look at the approach. Now, SERAP has employed the approach of going through the judiciary to demand for accountability. We'll find that in some cases it's usually done through protests by civil society organizations. So which would be better? Which would actually make government sit up and respond to the question of accountability? Or should it be a combination of both protest and going through the judiciary?
No. I think in civilized climate, nobody talks about protests. The judiciary is the last hope of the common man. And it's unfortunate that, especially in the third world, that people don't understand what due process is. And you need to have to follow due process to achieve some key and specific goal. Every time you protest, you disrupt the economy. The economy bleeds. And so the people you think you're fighting for, you're actually harming them. On the other hand, if people can't do their business, then of course your GDP falls. So protest is not an option. Strikes are not options. In short, as a matter of fact, it will likely be the last resort. That is when people seem to be coming. But I think Serap have done what is right. You go to the courts, which is the institution of government, the organ of government that is empowered to adjudicate case between government and its people, or people to people. So the adjudication process is what Serap has adopted, and I think this is the right way to go. When people have grievance, they should have confidence to approach the court, also having at the back of their mind that if they approach the court, that it is not a highest bidder kind of case, that they can actually procure justice and at not too exorbitant cost.
Okay, the issue of to what use this repatriated fund should be put is a major concern. And some are saying that, okay, there were families, people, individuals that suffered one kind of abuse or the other during this Abacha regime. This particular fund we're talking about was taken from the coffers of the country. Now they are saying, okay, for those who suffered human rights abuses, they should get some form of restitution, even from this particular fund. Does that argument hold water?
Yeah, I think for me, it's not a valid argument because you can actually not determine those who suffer or the number of people who actually had direct wrongs in these human rights abuse or issue you just raised. But I think what is fundamental is that what's the business of government? The business of government is to provide social infrastructure which everybody can benefit from. So when we are recovering such load, we can actually channel into government business. You invest them in health, you invest them in education, you can invest them in other social programs that will benefit people collectively. And that was what was actually wrong with the way and manner in which the agreement between Switzerland and Nigeria really played out. That you're saying, okay, you have to transfer this money to the poorest of the poor. Number one, we have no data about who is actually poor in Nigeria. We don't have the data because we have not been sufficiently identified as a people. And again, this is another issue that I think that the government must also take very seriously. The issue of national identification. We are just 200 million people, and it should not take us forever. Giving each and every citizen of this nation or resident an identity. It should not become a problem. It should not be burdensome. Because it's only when you identify people and their national identity is tied to all social services and commercial services, like the banks, then you will be able to identify who is actually poor. I've emphasized this over and over again. India has done this.
You said that.
And so they are able to actually transfer subsidy to the real poor because they have opened accounts for people and they see, you can see what is on the account of the person you're actually giving this resource. Now what we do here is that so we are sharing the money to the poorest of the poor. How do we really determine that the real poor actually get this money? Now, if we don't have means of really identifying who are the real poor of the poor, because what you see here for some people is political patronage. Because if the money comes to your state, you are likely to give it to the members of your political party and not the actual poor people. So what government should do is really invest this in social projects that can affect the life of everybody. Put it in general hospitals, put it in common road that all of us will use.
In education.
And then all of us, and education, and many of us will benefit.
Does this judgment have the ability to birth a precedence whereby present government begin to probe previous governments? Though this one has come through the suit filed by Sarah, but would that lead to the precedence of the current government probing past governments?
I don't think the government should waste any energy trying to probe what has happened in the past. They should focus on what is happening, the one that is within their control. What happened in the past is actually outside of their control, and the cost and investment on trying to find what is not there, I don't think should be the real focus of the government. And what the government should be concerned about is to see, let it not happen going forward.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think Serap is not asking for probe. But if Serap eventually will go back to court when the information in the public domain is known, there's nothing wrong that if people are indicted for wrongdoing, they should not be probed.
But you know how we are with things. You may just find that in one state, a right group is asking that the current government probe the past government on certain issues.
Well, I think time will tell. That's just the short answer to it. But like I said, let's focus on governance. And yeah, we can't leave the past for real, but there are ways to go about the past. And the court is the appropriate organ to ask questions about the past, because we are obligated to answer those questions. That was, I must say thank you for coming to the show once again. You're a part of us, and we appreciate your coming. So that is that segment. We are not done yet on the show. It is still early exchange on Souk News. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we go to another issue for the day. Please stay with us.
The cornerstone of brand equity is doing what you say and saying what you do. This engenders trust, and trust is a currency of brand equity. The thing about trust is that in a society where the rule of law is weak, it becomes an even bigger currency than in other law-abiding societies. And this brand equity is, for me, what has been largely responsible for most of the uncommon advantage that I've enjoyed, whether it's in building CWG PLC or the Also Leadership Academy. People say, well, if Austin Okere is involved, then it is credible. And that puts a huge burden on your shoulder, a burden of meeting that expectation. But the burden, nonetheless, that is even more yielding, rather than endless expensive advertisement on global news stations. It is that burden that spurs you on to continue to do what is right. It takes 25 years to build a brand, and it may take just 5 minutes to totally destroy it. I think what we must realize also is that we are not perfect. Sometimes things fall over and they don't go as planned. When things fall over, we have to be transparent in communicating, in admitting, show a clear path of restitution and corrective action. Hiding things under the cover of let's manage the customer, let's not him know, destroys trust. And I think that the best way in which we can build and sustain any strong brand equity is not by placing expensive ads all over the place, but by building trust with people, which in summary is doing what you say and saying what you do. Think about it.
In the cab-hailing industry, user concerns have been brought to the forefront, and addressing these issues and implementing essential reforms will greatly strengthen confidence and restore integrity in the industry. As we delve into critical matters affecting users on a daily basis, a sustainable solution can promote collaboration as we work towards a safer, more transparent and customer-centric cab-hailing ecosystem. This new approach will challenge prevailing beliefs and opinions about cab-hailing services while acknowledging the mounting concerns expressed by customers. Our focus is to highlight the increasing number of complaints and engage in discussions about potential solutions to enhance the overall customer experience. Opinions regarding cab-hailing services among customers vary significantly. Some users express frustration over the lack of pricing transparency, often encountering such pricing during peak hours or special events. They believe that cab-hailing companies should introduce more competitive and standardized pricing mechanism to ensure fair charges. Passenger safety is another concern, with demands for stricter background checks and improved driver training programs.
Is the extra charges. Initially when you book, and you see the price that will reflect, but at the end of the trip, you will see something else.
Issue with both on Saturday, from Festac to Ajawa Estate in the morning. It was in the morning, so I didn't expect the fare to be as high as 5,500. That is how much I paid. Whereas on the app, I saw 4,000 something. So I just said, okay, no problem. So I now asked that, what was going on? He now said there was traffic, but the traffic wasn't so much for it to jump up that high.
As the industry became a subject of both praise and criticism, some users noted their appreciation for convenience and accessibility provided by these services. They consider the ability to request a ride with a few taps on their smartphones to be a significant advantage. However, even within this group, there is a consensus that improvements can be made to address existing shortcomings.
Is that maybe they should meet with government. They should subsidize this pricing of the thing because it's killings. Because the situation is very hard, as we know. Nigeria is somehow hard now, currently.
Carry people without booking them like normal online stuff.
Services that need to be worked on, as regard maybe meeting the private sector that deals with this business and try to correct them in a way to suit the public.
Also, emphasis are laid on the need for cab-hailing services to prioritize sustainability, maintain integrity, especially with arriving a different fare at the end of it.
I think integrity matters in business. So for them to maintain their integrity, I think they should stick to the initial price that normally displays before the commencement of the trip.
They also remark on environmental responsibility, given the ecological impact of traditional gasoline-powered vehicles used by many cab-hailing companies. They called for the integration of electric or hybrid vehicles into fleets to reduce carbon emissions and promote greener transportation alternatives.
During our gasoline engine vehicle, I think we need to step up to the next level where we indulge in green energy. Most of the countries now are using electric vehicles, and they have their charge station, which make it more convenient, and you can drive up to 50 miles before the battery one down.
While they call for government integration of policies to effectively manage their activities, acknowledging these concerns and engaging in meaningful discussions may pave way for implementation of necessary reforms and creating customer-centric ecosystem. Grace Komolafe, Souk News.
Okay, there was a report on cab-hailing services in Nigeria if you had to use one of them. But currently, some customers are beginning to pour in some complaints one after the other, talking about the issues with cab-hailing services, ranging from apps estimating fares that are sometimes different from the eventual billing, particularly when there are no factors that could have led to that? Because I know that when there's a traffic situation, sometimes it's bound to be different from what you actually, the initial bill charge. So, but there are also issues now that it's not as rosy as it used to be.
Honestly
you just
speaking,
get into a ride and then you get to your destination, you find out you have to pay something else. And sometimes some drivers too wanting to do some negotiation outside of the app
honestly speaking,
with
the issues did not start today. They're not recent anyway. They've been there since the beginning. We say that when we copy an idea that is not native to us, there is no harm in copying. But we have to copy the perfection or the excellence of that particular idea. What we seem to have copied in our parts of the world is a partial excellence of the idea. Fine, the arrival of cab hailing services, brought a lot of comfort and convenience
sanity
to us, and everybody became quote unquote a big boy. It
Yes.
matters less now.
You can ride in a very,
because
in a very cozy.
Of course, you can ride. And for those who are into public image perception and so on and so forth,
Yes.
it helped. And now, but the issues are still there. One of those issues is security of both the riders and even the drivers. Of course, in the past, we've had one or two cases, not one or two, a few cases where either the driver got murdered by passengers or passengers got some kind of wrong treatment or the other. And
particularly at night.
Yeah, at night. And these are minimal as some of these issues. And now, what you spoke about, the economics of it all.
Yes.
People are getting to pay more than they were paying for in the past. During the cash crunch,
a lot of
course,
persons
government
resorted to the
intervened.
use.
No, the government, maybe in Lagos State for now, for instance, intervened, brought down
subsidized.
Yes, but just after the cash crunch, yes, we went back full swing, and we're even paying so much more than in the past. And people like us or people like you who are using the services are complaining, and they're looking at it, okay, what can we do to bring some sanity into that particular system? So Sam is here with us, who also, sometimes when he doesn't want to drive his car, deploys the services.
That's also one benefit of the car hailing service. When you don't want to go on certain routes and just, okay, let me take a ride.
Because in Lagos, trust me, driving is not fun. It's not fun for many of us. Maybe for some people it may be fun, but for many of us, it's not fun. Sam, welcome to the show. His name is Sam Orowuje. He is a Director of Research and Development for Soup News. You're welcome on board. We're glad to have you here. You rode here by yourself or you deployed one of the services?
The cab. Oh.
So, are you feeling the heat? Or for you, it's still...
What has been your experience?
No, I think there are really no issues apart from the hike in the fuel prices, which automatically will relate to the cost of service. So essentially, I think car hailing or cab hailing services have come to stay, and commuters will continue to use them in spite of the challenges that are associated with them. Thank you.
Okay, now you just, maybe you're one very lucky customer who's never had an issue regarding the price increase. But not just that the prices have been hiked. Of course, we understand that the price of petrol is not the same as it used to be, so it is expected that they too will also increase the price. But looking at complaints of price estimate, from when you book a cab, you're giving the price. This is what it will cost to take you from point A to point B. And then when you get to your destination, it's different at the end of the day after the trip is ended. And some customers have complained about this being a repeated occurrence.
I think it's essentially a tool that has been deployed to give you what you call an estimated billing. The billing is programmed based on stimulation that was done. So there are percentage margin at the point of arrival, taking cognizance of your route, the traffic concentration. So minimally, there's a percentage increase based on the estimated cost at the point of arrival. So essentially, there's little too much margin. Maybe sometime at the point of the ride, maybe you see your trip is about 3,100. On your final destination, in some cases, you see 3,800 or 4,000, as the case may be. So that is driven essentially by the route, occasioned by traffic issues. So I think the margins are not really too bad.
I have an issue with that, and I want to disagree with you. The margin could be very, very bad, because I've had colleagues complain of booking at the rate of 2,100 naira, and by the time they got home, it was like 5,000 plus. For the traffic was not the issue. Then that's one side of the story. There are some of these service providers who charge exactly what you see in the same community, in the same economy. They are playing it. If you see 2,000 naira at the end of the trip, trust me, you are still having 2,000 naira. Now, what is the issue? If you are saying it's because of the economics of the whole thing, why are some still thriving, giving you the exact charge you saw when you were booking, while some are like, okay, let's factor in these extra percentages?
Yes, I just alluded to that fact. Sometimes you pay the exact fee. There are other configurations that may change what you pay finally. So I think that's not an issue of...
Maybe you didn't get my question.
Yes,
we have more than one service provider in this cab hailing service. Now, there are some, what you see exactly at all time is what you will get when you get there. If you apply some others along the same route, you get these companies we're talking about now. Maybe you can be any with it.
Okay, I think what he's asking is that why is that some apps will have a disparity. It's not constant. You find maybe you were charged at the beginning of the ride before you booked. You were charged 2,000 naira, and no traffic, no delays. The routes, perhaps the same route you've used with that same cab service over time, and then at the end of the ride, it just escalates to almost double, or there's an increase, and you can't just explain how that happened. It happens couple of times, but with some other services, you don't find such issues.
It doesn't happen. It's constant.
I may not be able to speak to that with some level of authority, but the point being made is that sometimes when you make general assumptions about the fee being specific with certain service provider, may just be beyond a general explanation, to the extent that the kind of information that you have may just be coming from a specific people. So I don't think that can just be specifically be mentioned to certain service provider, in my view. There are places where I have paid exact amount based on what I see when I book. At some point, there's a little spike in the price regime. So my thinking is that there are some points where you get the exact charges. At some point, there might be a spike in that regard. So it's neither here nor there, in my view.
Let's talk about security. Now, this is not something that only the passenger is concerned about, even the driver. I've had an experience where I booked a ride and then I sat at the back. At first, I sat on one side, just directly behind the driver, and then I had to move to the other side. And the man was saying, he asked the question, why did you move? Okay, I sat first close to the window. Close to the window, so he could actually see me from the mirror, and then I moved behind him, so he became very worried and asked, why did you move? So I laughed and I said, I'm a lady, I should be scared of you. He said, no, you're where I can't actually see what you're doing. Can you move over to the other side? There have been some recommendations that perhaps there should be the introduction of maybe a cam or a recorder that records conversations between the passenger and the driver for rides. Do you subscribe to that? Will it help to improve security?
Yes, I think so. But even the service provider, they already have an inbuilt application where, if, for example, I was coming into Lagos Island this morning, as soon as I took the cab, I took a screenshot of my destination and I sent to my family. So that's a security check in itself. But in our environment, people don't really look at some other elements, security feature that are inbuilt in those applications. So if we are talking about putting other gadgets that we emphasize security, yes, but you already have some of those features that you can send as soon as you book your ride. You can send a WhatsApp showing the driver the details of the car to people. And for example, my own personal security for my daughters in particular is that once you take the cab, just try and snap the number plate and send. So, and once you enter the cab, just keep a call. I'm so cab moving to so direction. So that other person is in check that the information is added. That can reduce that infraction into security. There's a guy who took me at a point too. He said he was kidnapped by some guys, and it was this information that was sent out to his brother that led to a trade, and those guys were caught in the hotel where they took the guy to, and I think the police was able to arrest them. So I think we should be security conscious. Some of those features are there, and let's use those features that are in the app, but we can improve on what we can see to secure citizens.
Okay, let's look at the quality of service. When this car hailing service first started in Nigeria, we were treated like kings and queens.
Of course.
We experienced politeness like never before. We saw perfect gentlemen riding the cab. As in, they
were very courteous.
Whether you are a man or a woman, it was immaterial. What music do you want to listen to? And I was like, really? Here? Oh, then you will make a demand and they will play to you. And I think I rode on a couple of occasions where I was offered snacks.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. But today, snacks out of the window, politeness out of the window. And you now even find cabs without air conditioner.
Rickety cars.
Honestly speaking, what has happened? Quality service, service of quality is coming down. Is it because we're now used to ourselves, as in the so-called, maybe not Nigerian factor? Sometimes we just take our eyes off what brought people in the first place. And that has been the bane of businesses in this part of the world. Speak to that.
I think essentially it has to do with customer service. The point here is that at the point of entry into the market, people were trained to maintain certain standard. But as the business grew, more people were recruited into those service. The point essentially has to do with the service provider. They need to up their game in terms of training to sustain the service standard which they subscribed to earlier. But like every other business, there are a lot of other comers into the business who cannot sustain the customer service standard which were initiated. So, in my view, for those service providers, there's a need to constantly train and retrain those staff based on the business value proposition in terms of how to provide service so they can sustain service delivery, and you constantly stay above the curve in terms of what your clients or users may want to experience.
Still on customer service, before, just when when the car hailing service started in Nigeria, you find that if you have issues and you needed to engage customer service regarding your experience, they attend to you promptly. But these days, it almost seems like because it's not a physical interaction, it's just you interacting with an app. So when you make a complaint or when you have issues, it's either there's delay or there's no response at all. How can that issue be addressed?
Essentially, I think we have issues generally across all service sector in Nigeria in relationship to customer service, customer experience. The feedback mechanism or customer service feedbacks are poorly handled, and again, because most of them has not paid for service failures. If you pay dearly for service failure, then you treat customer feedback very seriously. And I had an experience. I won't call the product. There's a particular service provider who brought in an item into this country, a TV item, but I won't mention the product. And I had a problem after purchasing the item, 12 months after, and I had a problem. I was away from the country, and I asked my wife, and she said he doesn't have time to take it. So he said the warranty was over, and I went in there and said, look, we can no longer service this item, and that you don't have the part. I said, wait a minute, you don't have the part, and you brought this product into the country, no problem. I'm going to reach out to your regional office in South Africa, which I did. And I saw a lot of people dropping their products for trading and all that. And I got a replacement because I understand what service standards are. And I made a claim, and they sent me a brand new television, which was newer than what I have. So the point I'm trying to make here is that as customers, we need to place a demand on service providers, but then you must have what it takes and to be able to make those claims. So until we get to a level where there's a high level of demand on service provider, the service delivery will become suspect. Therefore, we as customers need to place a demand on service provider so that they can operate optimally to service their customers.
Okay, let's talk about profitability of the business model itself. For the drivers, of course, I am not asking you as a driver because you're not one. But when it first came, I mean, when the cab hailing service was first introduced into the Nigerian market, almost every car owner became a driver.
Yes.
Even those that had proper jobs, on their way to the office, they will switch on the apps, they will pick passengers, on their way back, they do it, break time, they will do it. Then it was very profitable because I asked questions. People were living like, okay, this is very good. But now you have drivers. First, when you book with some service providers, even after the app shows you the amount that you're paying, the driver will try to negotiate with you and ask you, how much are you willing to pay? Because this amount on the app does not pay the bills for me. And you're like, I don't understand. Now, in some cases, passengers would have to negotiate offline.
Yes.
You see drivers telling you, let's go offline, which in itself has risk implications. Because when you go offline, you are dropping guard. You can be kidnapped, you can be killed. Because there is no way the app itself as a company can monitor your movement or ensure that you are delivered where you are meant to be safely. Now, this speaks to profitability. What has eaten into the profit margin? Because if you find people now telling you, okay, let's go offline, I can't do it at this rate, then if they are not satisfied as drivers, then how comfortable can you be made as a rider?
No, I think essentially we can address this issue from two fronts. One, essentially, from my personal perspective, some of the drivers are into sharp practices, trying to cut corner by cutting off those ads. And the argument is that the return on investment doesn't favor them. I think that argument is neither here nor there. So to a very large extent, if you have a relationship with a particular service provider and you are not able to get your revenue or your returns based on the initial negotiation, I think the best thing to do is to sever the relationship. So on one breath, I don't buy into that idea that take your transaction off the app, which has security implications, which I've highlighted earlier. But I think to a very large extent is sharp practice, a corrupt tendency to earn more and to undermine the service provider. That's my personal view. On the other hand, if they feel that they don't get adequate return based on the initial negotiation they have, they should go back into the negotiation table so that they can up the game on their return. So our advice essentially, for what I do, I actually call off one of these guys about 2 days ago, I guess, when he said I should take it off the app. I said, no, never. So if you're going to take it off, you call off this, the trip. So the point is that always insist on paying the actual amount. That again will sustain the kind of environment where sanity operates. I think it's just a sharp practice. In my personal view, I don't own any business in that sector, but I just think that some of them are into sharp practices, which is not sustainable even for those who are providing the service.
Now, talking about a support structure, what can the government do to enhance not just cab hailing service, but for also those in the transportation business? For the cab drivers, some of them avoid certain routes because the roads are bad, and they tell you, oh, I can only, maybe I'll drop you off at this point, but I cannot continue because the road is bad, and that discourages the use for some areas.
So I think naturally the call is always improve on infrastructure by the government, but some will be in the long term, some are being handled. So what is important is that the government should create an enabling environment that sustain those businesses, improve on other means of transportation so that citizens can benefit from other lines, so that the economy gets better. Once you have more people riding, you create more value for people in terms of their earning, and people can get to their place of work speedily, and that will improve on productivity.
Okay, let's look at government, do I call it intervention or regulation at this point in time? Before these cab-hailing services came to Nigeria, of course, we had our own transport infrastructure, we had our own transport, we had the bodies that governed, you know, the transport sector. Then when these people came, I mean, when cab-hailing services came into the Nigerian market, of course, they came into direct competition with some organizations that I will not mention here. And that brought about, of course, you will see that they have different targets, because those who will ride buses are not probably the same as those who will deploy cab-hailing services. Now, at some point, I know that the Lagos State government mandated that everybody who plugs into the cab-hailing service as a driver, not as a passenger now, should come for some kind of certification. I can't remember the exact name. There's a particular ID you would get, which is not the same as your driver's license. It is peculiar to Lagos. Yes, while some see it as a way to for government to regulate the activities of players in that sector, some are seeing it as undue interference. Between interference and regulation, where do you stand?
I think essentially in terms of the certification, that is done in order to put people back. If you look at the regime of licensing in Nigeria, a lot of people have a driver's license, but they don't know how to drive. So the essence of the Lagos State government in particular, in line with the transportation policy of the Lagos State government, was that once you have had your driver's license, there was a need for you to go through a process of certification to be able to test whether you are in alignment with the road traffic laws and regulation, particularly of Lagos State. So therefore, the certification was to put people in line in terms of the transportation policy of the government. And I think I stand with the government on that area, because people need to be certified from time to time. In the US, even if you drive in the US for some time, and you get out of the US maybe for about 6 months, and you come driving, and you see an infraction, they will want to say, stay off the road, come for race certification before you go out. I saw an accident on my way to the studio this morning. A truck broke down, there was no reflector, and the bus ran into that, endangering a lot of people this morning, and it caused a traffic gridlock. So the certification is a welcome development, and it's recommended that most states, other states of the Federation, should key into that Lagos State Transport Policy Initiative.
Yeah, I quite agree with that, because it also will help security. Now, there was a story that was shared by a customer where I think he made a transfer during the cash crunch to a driver, and so it reverted, but unknown to him, only for him to get an alert that showed that the transaction reverted. So he was trying to get across to the driver, but he could not because he didn't have the driver's number. He called using the app, and so he reported to the customer service of that app and said he needed to get across to the driver so he can make a transfer. And over time, he kept checking with them. They still could not lay hold on the driver. They could not get in contact with the driver. So if something bad had happened and he needed that investigated, it means that they will be unable to trace which driver had done it, even when they had the vehicle number, the plate number of the driver. They still could not trace the driver. And so that's how it happened that he never got to pay the driver for the service. All right, there's so much we can look at when it comes to cab hailing service. It has become a thing that has come to stay. But looking at intercity travels, that's one aspect that is currently being opened. Do you think it should be encouraged, being that when you book a ride, most times it's just you on the ride, except maybe you have friends and family with you, or you share the ride? Should it be encouraged? That's a long stretch.
That again, that has to be with a personal decision. You cannot really make that as a policy. So whether it's interstate, whether it's intrastate, people make decisions based on their the information, the importance of what they want to do. That cannot be legislated, in my view.
Okay, so the issue of coverage also comes into discussion here. We know that it's only in major cities that you have these cab hailing services. I wouldn't talk about rural areas, but maybe there's something called semi-urban areas that are clamoring for these kind of services. Okay, let's be included. They are not. Of course, from the angle of profitability, because it's a business, it's not a free lunch, it's not a government incentive to anybody. But I would have thought maybe some other local players, because many of these cab hailing services are foreign companies owned, and maybe some local owners can come into play and create something that is a bit pocket friendly for the semi-urban areas, so that we can have more inclusivity in this cab hailing service, either as riders or even as drivers. What's your take on that?
No, I think the service is already permeating into semi-urban area. I think it has to do with investment decisions based on those who invest into those sector. Even though some of those service providers, from a general public perception, is essentially talking about owners that are foreign investors. You equally have local investors in those areas. So the local investors are like masquerades that are on the background.
Okay, let's look at maps, the use of maps.
And education of drivers. Wow, issues. Understanding
the map is one thing. Some drivers seem to understand the use of the map, whether it's Google Map or it's a map designed by their app. Some others do not understand the map very well. And two, it seems like the map doesn't get updated. For instance, if something has happened to a particular route, maybe there's repair ongoing there, it is sometimes not reflecting in that app. And so maybe if the driver doesn't know, he wants to take you through that route, and maybe you having to return to another different route, also increase the price you get to pay at the end of the day. So updating the app and training drivers on the use of the app.
And let's not forget that these apps are illiterate in our native language. Just to add that to that, because they get you confused sometimes, really.
How should this be done? Should it be done before they start, even before they engage them in the service, or it should be a periodic thing?
Renewal, periodic review of the apps.
Of the apps, and also the training of the drivers.
Yeah, essentially, I think the maps were configured into their service delivery, but I think the challenge for most of the drivers is that most of them are not literate enough to read the map. On the other side, some of the configurations from the map are not constantly updated. I've had a situation where I tell drivers, do not go in this particular direction, and they are so adamant based on using the app. And there's a particular guy who carried me, and I told this guy that I'm familiar with this area, that you are heading into a close. You're not going to move forward. And the guy got into that point, and it was a close, and you couldn't penetrate. And he was just looking at me. So it has to do with education, and some of them need to have some flexibility in terms of what they do, in terms of reading the map, and equally listen to the riders who are familiar with those environments, so that they can quickly get into their destination.
Okay, perhaps we should have the app, the map, voiced in different languages.
Yes, because
maybe
the
there should be the English.
map sometimes murders our names.
There should be the English language. There should be the ones done in Pidgin, and maybe in indigenous language, particular to an environment where they operate.
Is too stressful. Maybe Pidgin. Pidgin is another lingua franca in Nigeria, so I know. Okay, thank you very much.
You can see that in the feedback mechanism.
Okay, all right. We are still on the show, Early Exchange on Souk News, and it's been a good time spent with Sam Orowoji, who is a Director of Research and Development for Souk News. Let's go on a very short break now, and when we return, we'll bring another issue to the front burner. Stay with us.
Don't go anywhere.
So some time ago, I came up with this idea to establish a TV station. It was about 17 years ago, and the idea was for us to have a TV station to rival a particular TV station. And the more we grew up with the project, we found out that there's no need for us to try to rival a particular TV station, but for us to come up with our own unique TV station with a very good platform. So the Souk News is a product of research of over many years. I have a very strong background in research and development with over 22 years. And so the Souk News is as a result of this, my years of experience, exposures and travels. And that's why we have this TV news, the Souk News today. And we are proud to say that the Souk News is a product of Wash Media. Wash Media is the owner of Wash Radio, an urban radio station for the upcoming youth and of course the young entrepreneurs to have a platform to showcase what they do and to be able to celebrate them as well. So that is the idea. And we tend to demystify the norm. We tend to carve the ordinary to extraordinary. We tend to be one of the leading news platforms in sub-Saharan Africa. We also intend to be the ideal workplace for all journalists or media professionals that say, okay, look, I would want to work with a media TV station because they possess the qualities that are irresistible and yet hard to find among the media organizations in sub-Saharan Africa. Yes, we try not to make it boring. We want to make it captivating by the content, like I mentioned. So say it's a business news, not necessarily that we are 100% not considering the fact that we have the upcoming young business people among ourselves. Not forgetting that we have the skit industry. One of the major work is for us to do evaluation and do a critical analysis of the skit industry to know the value of the skit industry. It's one of the major pride of Nigeria in recent years. And the entertainment industry. When you're talking about entertainment, you know that we're talking about the young, sharp, brilliant, innovative, creative, those people working behind the cameras, those people in the front of the cameras. So we are exploring all angles to see how we can capture everyone from the business perspective, who give value to every project you do. So if you're a market woman and you sell tomatoes, you want to give value to your project. So we are not focusing on the big people as well only. We are also looking at how to give value to the man who sells corn on the street or the market woman that sells tomato in the market.
In the history of cinematography, there are only a few figures who have left an indelible mark like Charles Olumo, popularly known as Agbako. As Yoruba movie fans worldwide celebrate this remarkable thespian who turned 100 years this week, Souk News went through times to explore the life and career of a true icon.
I am an undimensionable horror, and nobody can Tamilaya. He who Tamilaya is Takulaya. He who Takulaya will die hippopotaneously, patapatale and rautically. Are you okay? Yes, sir.
With a career spanning over 6 decades, Agbako,
whose original name is Alhaji Abdulsalam Sonyaolu, has left an unforgettable mark on the silver screen and has captured the hearts of millions worldwide. From his early beginnings in the heyday of Nollywood to his remarkable performances that have become part of Yoruba cultural fabric, Charles has enchanted Southwestern audiences across generations. His talent, versatility, and magnetic presence has made him a true icon. The veteran actor, whose journey into acting started in an apostolic church in Mushin, Lagos, has undoubtedly contributed to the golden era of cinema and remained a symbol of excellence and dedication throughout his career. He has become synonymous with excellence in the film industry. His dedication to the craft, attention to details, and ability to portray a vast range of characters have set him apart as one of the greatest indigenous actors of all time. His unforgettable movies, which include Taxi Driver, Jagun, Amiorun, Aye, Jaye Simi, Shaworoide, Igbo Dudu, have resonated with audiences worldwide. He has set a standard for excellence that continues to inspire many actors and countless others in the movie industry. Sook News wishes Baba Charles Agbako Olumo a happy 100th birthday.
Oh yeah! I don't know, I don't know, you my village, I hear you need that. My village! Mudi
Thank you for staying tuned. The show is still Early Exchange on Souk News. Earlier, before all those breakers were played, you saw a report, a short report on Charles Olumo Agbako. Agbako is 100 years old. For those of you who are not native speakers of the language, those of you who are not, actually, Agbako is not his real name, actually. His name is Alhaji Abdulsalam Sonyaolu, but most people know him as Agbako, Charles Olumo Agbako. How he came about the name Agbako or Olumo, I don't really know. I would have loved to talk to him, but he's not here. A few days ago, he turned 100. And in a country where the average life expectancy is about 51 years.
49 to
51. Well, I'm going to live longer than that.
Women tending to live longer, like being on the side of 52.
Well, you may not be too wrong because we have more landlords than landladies. More landladies than landlords. And where is the landlord? He has passed. Okay, that is the man there. For those of us who watched him growing up, I mean, when we were growing up, it was a face to behold. Well, the name is not really appealing. Agbako in Yoruba land means bad fortune. But I guess for him to live up to 100 years, that is a dose of good fortune because not many people get to see that 100-year mark. This is a man who always acts warlords in movies. He looks tough, he acts tough, he talks tough. And today, we are all celebrating him for clocking 100 years. Before we even bring in our guest via Zoom, if he's available, for now, let's talk about it. 100.
Yes, being a centenarian, yes. Being a centenarian is not something that you just come by. It's not every day you get to attend a birthday ceremony of someone who just turned 100. In fact, when people want to, when people bury their parents and it happens that maybe any of their parents had lived up to 100, it's usually a celebration. People tell them, don't even cry. Because I remember that I had a colleague once whose father passed at 104, and then he was crying like, it will beat you if you cry, because it's not something very easy. Like you just mentioned that life expectancy in that race between 49 to 52. Now, he looks tough in movies. I want to think that he's also a very tough person. Maybe that's why, and God also helping him, and lifestyle, he's been able to live up to the age of 100. Now, looking at him, he looks like someone who has a very active lifestyle. You know, the danger, the harm that sedentary lifestyle does to people. And these days, we're getting to see more people live sedentary lifestyle. That's if they exercise, not much of exercise, and not much of moving around. And even for parents, this in society where you have people from the age of 60 retiring from active service, particularly if they've been in the civil service, at that age, 60, 65, you find that most of them just resign to staying at home, reading papers, doing nothing really very active. But this is someone who even at his old age has been in the movie industry. It takes a lot.
We call it the noodle generation. He was not part of the noodle generation. There is no harm in eating noodles. I eat it anyway. When you talk about sedentary lifestyle and eating habit even comes into play. For someone like him to keep fit and keep standing in the movie world up till the age, I'm not so sure he's still acting. I've not seen him in movies of recent. I've not really been watching a lot of movies. But for me, he was a hero that some of us loved to hate or hated to love in a contest, because you see there's this perception when we're younger that what you act is who you are in real life. It took me a while to believe that, okay, if I meet this man, I will not run away, because it was always acting like, yes, I am just an embodiment of bad luck. But to the movie industry, he is not any form of bad luck in any way. He has helped a lot of people to grow in the industry, and he has been able to exact real name, really. But then, Charles Olumo Agbako is not anything close to bad luck anywhere in the world. Today, the entire Yoruba Nollywood industry is celebrating him, and if you read all the accolades that were given to him via social media handles yesterday or 2 days ago, you will really see that he is a man that has touched many lives, and he has started way before now. There is one part of the journey, though, that I think we should speak to. When he came into acting, it was those days when people were paying the sacrifice. You know, some act now without taking anything away from them, or they just act now and they get all the big bucks. But back then, for each generation in acting, you must be passionate because there was no money there. And when you look at the quality of life that actors are living now based on the income they're making, and you look at what happened back then, you'll be like, okay, it seems these people, a man like this, had done all the work for the new generations of actors to come and, you know.
There are always people like that who pave the way for others. Every industry has its teaching stage and has those who build the industry, who shape it. It is not just for the movie industry, for art generally, other aspects of art. Even if you go to music, there are people who did music because they were passionate about doing music and they didn't make much money from it. They just had a talent, they wanted to entertain, they wanted to correct social ills with their works. But over time, it's metamorphosed into an industry that is very, very lucrative. And so those who came on board, who joined the industry at the later part, got to benefit from it. So there are always people like that, and we appreciate them for the influence that they've had. You mentioned that some persons are already trying to pattern their way of acting after him. And then going now to his name, the name that you, he's probably known for Agbako. You know how we sometimes begin to like certain characters. Take, for instance, Patience Ozoko, probably known as Mama G.
Mama G.
Because we often saw her in Nollywood movies playing the role of a bad mother, a bad mother-in-law. So we just got to love our interpretation of the role. So I think it came from a role he played. People fell in love with that character, and over time they just began to associate that name with him.
There is this famous line of his. Okay, in Yoruba land you will say, may we not meet Agbako, or Agbako. You say you have met this one. If you meet him in person, Agbako means may we not meet Agbako. You have met him now. Anyway, but your life has not been bad to any age. Okay, so we join the rest of Yoruba Nollywood actors to celebrate and felicitate a man that has turned 100. That we wish him more years on earth in good health, and we do hope that the new actors in the industry will be as passionate as a man like this has been all through his acting career, because it takes a commitment beyond money to stay on the stage for as long as he has stayed, even without anything coming in now. Okay, so
and we also hope to see more veterans in the industry live to this age to mentor the upcoming ones.
Okay, that said, let us introduce to the show again today two new faces. New to you, but not new to us who are set. Lotta and Alex. They are here to give us happenings in the world of social media in the last couple of hours. It's called Social Feeds. Guys, if you're ready, please do it.
All right, thank you very much, Ayo and Blessing, for that, and welcome to Social Feeds. Thank you very much, Ayo and Blessed, for that. Welcome, and you're welcome to Social Feeds. I am Alex Terry.
I am Chiluta Otilu. Today, as usual, we are diving into the world of Twitter to uncover the latest trends, insights, and buzz surrounding businesses. So, Alex, what's on Twitter feed for today?
All right, thank you very much, Luther. We're going to be exploring the powers of Twitter, as the platform is the main business platform for engagement and other interactive tweets. But let's jump to it right away. Twitter is known for its fast pace of nature and its perfect performance for business to be shared and news and content to connect people and audience. So we have for you across standout stories, that caught your attention?
Absolutely. The top stories for today are NNPC, Headies, Mission Impossible. Let's start off with NNPC today. So the private security contractor Tantita Security Services intercepted a suspicious vessel carrying stolen crude oil based on incredible intelligence.
The vessel, found without valid documentation, was sourced illegally for an offshore whale jacket in Osun State, Nigeria.
Now, further investigation revealed that the vessel has been operating in stealth mode for the past 12 years, with its last report's location being Tin Can Port in July 2011.
In response, the appropriate government authorities decided to destroy the vessel as a strong warning and deterrent against such illegal activities.
Now, this action aims to combat the significant economic losses, corruption, and environmental devastation caused by the illegal trade of stolen crude oil.
Wow. In as much as destruction of the vessel serves as a strong deterrent to individuals and criminal networks involved in illegal trade of stolen crude oil. And not just that, it sends a clear message that such activities will not be tolerated and there will be severe consequences for those engaged in them.
But I mean, why destroy it? What do you think?
I don't think it's something that should be done, but this leads us to the tweets, and let's get your comments. Okon says, considering selling the vessel instead of destroying it to try to recover losses they might have caused us as well, how do you destroy vessels without risking that environmental and animal and human inhabitants?
Yeah, that's very, very true. Now, moving over to other tweets. This is by Oladoa Equino. This person said, they intend to destroy the evidence with the destruction of the vessel. Well, it's probably an in-house deal. That was by Oladoa Equino.
Ovia says, the name of the individuals behind the company managing the vessels should also be published. Also, their properties should be confiscated and forfeited to the federal government before they are charged to court, and we should not be treating them with kids' gloves.
Now, moving on to more tweets. Remy said that I have serious issues with non-state actors having more naval capacity than our Navy, who are paid and trained for the job.
Also, on the tweets, we have it that Navy, that's Alfred, is saying that the Navy, the whole battalion of the Navy can intercept the vessel which steals crude oil, but a private contractor can do that. Please scrap Navy and contract their jobs to private contractors since they're more effective. Hashtag scrap Nigerian Navy. And he also put the president on it at the official bar.
Yes, that's all we have for you on that particular trend. Let's move over to the next trend, which is the Headies. Now, Headies has been trending on Twitter, and it's because the Prolific Nigerian Award is about to host its 16th edition, and it has been rolled out, and it has rolled out the nominee for the List of Rookies Award.
Now, the nominees are Bayani, Kaid, Gucci, Bloody Civilian, Odumodu Black, and Elite Skills.
Now, organizers of Nigerian's popular awards show, Headies, have rolled out the official Rookie of the Year. That is the nomination list for its 2023 edition. And as expected, the year in review for its 16th edition starts from January 2022 to March 2023.
Hence, only musical content released between these times would be eligible for the nomination. That's those that release their music between January 2022 and March 2023. But let's find out your thoughts on this. As Maven Arafat said, if Don Jazzy is one of the committee, then Bayani is winning. And if otherwise, it's definitely Odumodu Black.
Well, King Okwe of ABJ said this list is justified.
Angry Bird said, Headies is a scam show. If you want to know the winner, check out the bosses. And if you know the bosses is close to Ayo, once you know them, you know who's going to win it.
Well, I think that's a huge conspiracy theory. I think it is. Now, moving on, Adam said Gucci Rookie. Gucci is far gone and shouldn't be on the list by the definition of rookie. But what do you think is the definition of rookie when it comes to the Headies?
Well, like you said, Alfred said earlier, like what this guy said earlier, that if you are the requirement is that you have to be in the industry, between January last year and March this year for you to get in there. So if that's their own definition of a rookie, then we have to play by it. Alfred has it that it's between Kaid and Gucci. Those thinking Odumodu Black should forget about it. It's starting from January last year to March this year. And Odumodu Black wasn't in the picture as around that time. But he's meant to be amongst those nominated for it.
Well, like I'd always say, may the best person win. Whoever is best fit for it. Exactly, they should definitely win. That's all on that particular trend. And let's move over to the last spot for today, which is Mission Impossible. Now, Twitter users are raving about Mission Impossible 7, set to be released in Nigeria today.
The staggering $219 million US budget for the Mission Impossible 7 was more than double the average budget of the previous 6 films combined. 2018's Fallout previously had the highest cost of production at $178 million US.
Now, Mission Impossible 7 needs to make at least $800 million at the global box office to ensure that it won't be the lowest performing installment of the Mission Impossible franchise. Now, Mission Impossible 3 was a modest winner at the box office, accumulating roughly $700 million in revenue from a budget of $150 million budget.
In order for Mission Impossible 7 to outperform Mission Impossible 3, which has generated a revenue of 2.7 times the budget, it would need to surpass roughly $785 million US at the global box office.
Now, I think all of this numerical analysis is just it says a lot about how much these people put in their movies.
Well, it's the revenue that is put into the production of the movie, and it has to surpass what is generated from ticket sales and adverts and sponsorship. But a far pace for it to be successful. But I wish the movie is going to come out today, later on in Nigeria, so you better watch out for that. So let's get the tweets.
Now, on the first comment, Paul B. Loves Movie said, absolutely amazing movie. I adored every inch of it. And the things Tom Cruise does to entertain us fans can never be taken for granted. He's truly magnificent. Dead Reckoning is a masterpiece. Bring it on. Part 2, # Mission Impossible.
Steve Wardrop says, this movie is phenomenal. The only person that I can think about right now is Charles Okocha when he says that phenomenal thing. You know how he says it. But I was able to see the movie yesterday, and it was roughly impressive. You said he was really impressed by what happened in the movie, and it leaves you wanting for more.
All right, so more tweets. Jordan said, I still can't believe the stunts not being done without CGI. It looked thrill-seeking.
You know, when you watch movies done in computer-generated views, it really looks really good. But Bodge says that, no offense to Tom, but I'm tired of him clog the box of his work, yes, to doing some franchise over others and over. For his craft, it lacks creativity, ambition to expand on his range of acting talent. Sure, it brings steady money, but doesn't he wonder what would have been otherwise? And it makes me think of it sometimes that what would Tom Cruise be doing if he wasn't doing Mission Impossible? Because he has a lot of roles to play in the movie industry, but he just stuck to one.
Well, that person said he is wondering what he would do outside of Mission Impossible, that his creativity level is no longer there. I actually beg to differ on that, because there are very few people that do their stunts on their own, that it's all like it happens on by themselves.
We can't take that away from him, but what I'm saying is, what would have happened without Mission Impossible?
Well,
like
I don't...
doing all the franchise, it would have earned him some lots of money, but his talent is just really clinched to that.
Definitely. I actually don't see Tom Cruise doing a romantic movie. Do you see that?
I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that.
Well, moving on to the last tweet. This was said by John Peter Tomlin. He said, I wish Tom Cruise was British. What an amazing 007 he would be.
All right, that's a wrap on Social Feeds this morning. Join us tomorrow as we unravel some soul stories worldwide. And do follow us on our social media platforms. I am Alex Terry.
And I am Chiluta Tulu.
Stay informed.
Well, exciting time we had with Chilita and Alex in the social fate. And imagine how much the Hollywood movies are grossing. Mission Impossible 7 expected to rake in whooping $800 million.
Okay, yes. Well, we don't have the time to really analyze or some of the content of the social feed. Earlier on the show, we were trying to bring on board via Zoom a veteran Yoruba actor, Mr. Jide Kosoko. They call him Daddy Jide Kosoko, but I don't know. If he's still there, I learned he's standing by on Zoom. Can we just have him and let him say one or two things about
the Centenarian?
The Centenarian. Do we have him live? Okay.
Of course we do.
Mr. Jide Kosoko, should I say Daddy Jide Kosoko? It's good to see your face here. We've been waiting for you. We have just 2 minutes. You are one of the faces we grew up to like. We adore you. We appreciate what you do, and you have raised a lot of younger people after you. Now we are talking about someone much older than you. Maybe not. This is Agbaku. You've met an Agbaku. Unto good, not unto evil. Now, what would you say? He just turned 100. Speak to that.
Yes, first and foremost, let me say I am happy to be here. And when we talk about Uncle Charles Sonyaolu, he's our father, he's a leader, he's one of those that we look onto when we were actually growing in the
We seem to be having network glitch there. Okay.
All right, nice to know that we can still have a conversation with Jide Kosoko, a veteran Nollywood actor. Hello, are you there? Okay.
Yes, I'm here. I've been talking.
Okay, thank you much. Thank you so much for staying with us. So you were talking about the centenarian Agbako, and I know that the whole of Nollywood is celebrating this person. But what specifically is Nollywood doing to celebrate people like this who have not just only lived long, but have also impacted the industry?
Yes, no doubt about it. Uncle Chaso Lumo, aka Baba Agbako, is someone with so much love, like I said earlier. He has contributed in no small measure in raising the younger ones, and he is fond of always being in the midst of his younger colleagues, even more than his contemporaries. He is a man that has shown professionalism in all sense of it, because he was always there then, when he was much younger. And that is why you see all of us celebrating him everywhere.
Okay. The man, the centenarian Agbako himself, people say he has been a role model in the acting industry for upcoming artists. Would you just speak about the evolution of the character Agbako itself?
Yes, it started a long time ago. This was in a movie. No, even before then, most of the television productions is always on the Togli side, and anywhere